I'm so sorry for the wait, but now we will begin. The topic for session 5 is Don't Bank on the Bomb. The organizer is Physicians Against Nuclear War. Thank you all for coming. We'd like to begin. I will be your host today. I am the co-chair of Physicians Against Nuclear War. My name is Takeo NAKAGAWA. Before we begin, I'd like to give a few comments. I'm sure you are aware of DBOB. Some of you may have heard this for the first time, but the DBOB campaign is one of ICAN's projects, and it is led by the Dutch NGO PAX. And the objective is to urge the world's financial institutions to stop financing nuclear weapons manufacturing companies. Mega banks have actually invested and loaned money to nuclear weapons manufacturing companies. And this has been brought up as a problem. And we will continue to call out financial institutions in Japan to change their investment and loan policies. Later, we will be hearing from the NGO PAX from Susi SNYDER-san. And I'm not sure how much time we can take. However, I will do my best. Simultaneous interpretation to English and Japanese will be provided, so please click the language that you need to listen to. So now let's begin. Let us hear from Nakamura-san from PANW KINKI. The floor is yours. All right, I am from Physicians Against Nuclear War KINKI region. So you may have heard DBOB before, but I finally began to understand the process. The main goal is to don't bank on the bomb, the nuclear bomb. And as Koji-san said earlier, it is to not let financial institutions loan money on nuclear weapons. However, even if we do go to a financial institution, they won't listen to us. So we really thought about what we could do to be more effective. So we have made a system against healthcare companies so that they will not lend money to nuclear weapons production. Whether it's Nihon Seimei, all these mega banks and insurance companies have been lending money over a large period of time. And until this became an issue and it was brought up by us, not many people realized or even knew about the situation. But now, in the age of digitalization, we can get any bit of information that we want. Individuals can pursue information. Individuals can talk to mega banks. And companies, regardless of size, are required to be transparent with their budget if asked. And because of this, thanks to the digitalization, we have become aware of how mega banks use their money. And we will be hearing from Susie-san shortly. So please make sure to listen to her. Now, I wanted to be dramatic, and I brought this banner with me. And it's becoming quite famous in Osaka, maybe not so much in Tokyo. But if you see any campaign activities, people joining marches, or if you see any videos online, please be sure to support us. We actually even made a campaign song. So um, even young children who are elementary school age can understand this concept. And there are no copyright rules. You are free to play this song whenever and show our animation whenever you'd like. All right, we have heard from the Physicians Against Nuclear War KINKI. Now, please show us the slides. All right. So I'm sure you withdraw or put in money in the bank and you don't really think too much of it. But have you ever really thought about where your money is going, what it's being spent on? Or maybe nowadays you don't really go to the bank that often. I mean, there was an incident in Japan with a certain company with thousands of hundreds and thousands of yen being stolen. My wife actually works at a bank and she thought that she couldn't believe that something like this happened. So, it is true, though, that the majority of us trust mega banks. We trust the bank to keep our money safe, whether we are getting a mortgage or whether we are withdrawing our own money, we count on the banks. That being said, what would you say if you knew that your money, your precious money, was being used to make nuclear weapons? Now, I would like to share some facts that may surprise you. So, according to the NGO PAX from the Netherlands, the seven megabanks in Japan have invested a large amounts of money, unbelievably large amounts of money, in nuclear weapons manufacturing. You will see that some companies exceed 1 trillion yen. And if you go towards the bottom, you see the GPIF, the company that is responsible for your pension, has invested an insubordinate amount of money. Now, when it comes to mega banks, 株式を、その会社の株式を購入する。それから、we talk about stocks, sponsors, but with mega banks, the majority of the money is directly being lent to nuclear weapons manufacturing. So if we add all of the money that is being invested from Japanese companies, it totals up to 5,536 billion yen. And if we delve deeper, that is 287 companies spending 2 trillion yen. So with this situation, the international project, Don't Bank on the Bomb, was launched. And you can say Don't Bank on the Bomb, DBOB, as an abbreviation. It was launched to cut off funding to nuclear weapons manufacturers, and this was started by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. And about DBOB,
from the bank and the financing institutions, it does not allow them to stop them to give the money. That is the aim. So our aim of this activity is very clear. So try to stop financing the nuclear weapons manufacturing companies and also leave from that financing. By doing so, we are trying to realize a future, try to realize a nuclear weapon-free future. Also, about the DBOB project for the international situations, it will be covered by Susi SNYDER. So for now, we like to talk about domestic movement in Japan. So our positions against nuclear weapons. Since 2019, we launched the DBOB project. As it says on this slide, surveying financial institutions, encouraging financial institutions, and spreading the word and raising awareness of the DBOB project. So the project, in the beginning of the project, we had a survey and against finance institutions, if those companies have some sort of rules not to finance those countries related to nuclear weapons manufacturers. And there was only one company said yes. That means other companies are financing or loaning or investing a huge amount of money. It was worse than I could even imagine. So receiving this result, we realized that our money shouldn't be used to create nuclear weapons. So we recognize how important it is a problem for the nuclear weapon manufacturing. So we decided to create sessions open to the public, and we compose a theme song and also have public campaigns and also conducting the surveys and press conferences to share the information with the financial institutions. So by doing so, the bank of their publicity, their national economic or the healthy national economy should be important. So in recent years, not only banks, but also we have loans and also the climate change, SDGs, corporations, social responsibilities has become more important. So for them to be able to achieve that, we've been working on this. So here, we'd like to show a video that is been showing our 5-year effort. So please watch. So this is the DBOE project to move the financial institutions. So this is what we've been working on. We try to stop the financial support from the financial institutions. So I'd like to show how they have been changing from the next slide. We have been making changes, so please remember this. So in 2019, Risona Holdings, they banned their loans or the investment to the nuclear weapons manufacturers. And leading that, and following that, in the 2023, Japan Life Insurance also stopped the investment. This is one of the major life insurance company in Japan. So for them, we heard that there are still remaining investments, small amount of remaining investment to the manufacturing of nuclear weapons. Following that, we had Daiju Life Insurance. This is formerly Mitsui Life Insurance. With this, they have shifted very promptly. And we had a talk in February, and by April, they decided to ban this. And in their report, they state that they banned the investment loans, stop ban the loans to the manufacturing nuclear weapons. And in July last year, Taiwan Life Insurance also did the same. So by researching this, in 2019, we only had Arizona Bank. They made an announcement that they banned the investment loans to the nuclear weapons manufacturers. But by 2025, we have Nissei and also Daiju Life Insurance and Sumitomo Life Insurance and also Taiyo Life Insurance and Yokohama City Bank and Hiroshima Bank, and also Daido Life Insurance, and also. So all these financial institutions banned investment into and loans to nuclear weapons manufacturing. So they realized like if they don't do so, they may shut down the way to the future. So we like to ask you something. This is our favor. So please spread this DBOB project. You are saving and because your saving may be used to manufacture nuclear weapons. So please spread the fact that can be happening. And what I talked about today, please put the hashtag or don't bank on on the the bomb. Don't bank on the bomb. And also, we are going to introduce the theme song after this. So please share that on the social media. So with your public efforts or the effectiveness, we like to accelerate our activities and words to protect our future. Try to have like a real like money lending to be able to create peace in the world without nuclear weapons. So I'm going to introduce you the the theme song now. なき世界を作る TPNW って知ってるかい核なき未来を目指す活動なんだ核兵器を作る会社にお金を貸すのはやめよう金融機関に呼びかける大切な運動なんだ Don't back on the ball 核兵器にお金を貸すな Don't back on the ball 子供たちに核なき世界を未来の平和を作る一歩 Thank you for listening. Mr. Nakamura, do you have any comments? So I think that there has been a shift in the situation because of Hiroshi Matsumoto and the issues that he had with Fuji TV. People have been talking about the transparency of companies and how sponsors are very, very careful about what industries or what companies they interact with nowadays. Industries don't want their reputation tarnished and have other people find out where their money is going to. And I think little by little we can change the world together. I don't think there are many people here who will agree to having their money used for nuclear weapons as long as they get a little bit more pension. The tides have turned, and people want more transparency. People are getting smarter, and they can do more research on certain companies. As long as citizens know where their money is going, there is no way that they will agree to this situation.
By the way, if you show a child this song about 3 times, they'll probably learn it and they'll be able to sing the entire song. So, all right. Now let's speak with uh, Susie Snyder-san from PAX. And if you have any questions for Susie, if you are here live, please raise your hand. We will call on you. If you are participating online, there is a Q&A function in the chat. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions to Susie. Susie Snyder-san is part of the Nobel Prize winning ICAN. She is the program coordinator. She has also participated in the Don't Bank on the Bomb event that we had. With PANW. So we'd love to have Susie shed light on her activities.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm really excited to join you and talk about the work that we're doing together across the world to stop nuclear weapons by stopping the profit motive that keeps nuclear weapons around. I am so grateful for all the work that PANW has done. The song is wonderful and it stays in my mind all the time, and I share it with many people. I may not understand it very well, but the tune is very catchy and even I hum along. So thank you very much for doing that. And also thank you for the incredible progress in just 5 years from one institution to 11 that are resisting the urge to finance nuclear weapons. Congratulations. I know that many speakers at this conference will talk about the current threats and risks of nuclear war or the use of nuclear weapons by accident or miscalculation. So I'm not going to talk about that. I want to talk about one of the many tools we have to reduce those risks, and also to show who is behind the scam, this concept, this theory that is unprovable of nuclear deterrence. And I want to remind you, a couple of years ago, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, what did governments do? They raced to apply financial pressure. Canada took Russian vodka off the shelves. Finland canceled contracts with Russia's state-owned nuclear power supplier. And even Heineken, the Dutch beer company, stopped Russian operations completely, and they left Russia. It cost them 300 million euros to do so. And the idea was that if they limit the cash that flows into Russia and reduce Russia's access, not completely eliminate, but reduce Russia's access to global markets, it would have an impact on what the country was able to do. And this kind of effort, it takes time, but we know that it does have an impact. In fact, there was a recent analysis published by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace showing that in 2024, Russia's nuclear forces stopped being updated because the companies involved in the production of those weapons are experiencing financial and manufacturing problems due to sanctions, personnel shortages, and debt. Now, the pressure of sanctions is one piece of what paused this production. They shifted priorities in Russia to make other types of weapons because the conflict continues. However, the debt and the inability to get financing from the private sector, they cannot access money from mega banks. They cannot get financing. That is a factor that we have some power over. And it is one of the reasons that divestment and exclusion by financial institutions of the companies involved in the production of nuclear weapons can be such an interesting and powerful tool in our efforts to abolish these weapons forever. Because the plan is pretty simple. When we increase the cost of doing business with the nuclear weapons industry, investors stop investing, and that changes the industry itself. But who is the nuclear weapons industry? And it's companies from China, France, India, Italy, the Netherlands, Russia, the UK, and the US that are heavily involved in the production of nuclear weapons. Many of these companies have multi-year contracts, and those contracts are valued at about $465 billion. And they continue for decades. These companies plan to keep producing nuclear weapons for at least another 50 years. They are contracted by these governments to do so. But let me tell you about those companies just a little bit. In China, China's corporate structures are very, they're like a bowl of noodles. It's very twisted around. It's hard to pull them apart. But we have identified two very clearly that are producing the nuclear weapons for China. It's the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation and the China National Nuclear Corporation. And these are companies that, while the government of China is heavily involved in operating them, they also seek financing from outside and from other countries. Okay, in India, Bharat Dynamics Limited and Walshanaggar Industries are the two biggest companies involved in the production of India's nuclear weapons. Another Indian company called Larsen & Toubro has been associated with the production of nuclear weapons in the past, but they were on so many exclusion lists from banks, pension funds, insurance companies, that they came out and said, we will not take any more contracts. We have nothing to do with India's nuclear arsenal. They know it is a huge risk for them financially to be connected with nuclear weapons, so they are stepping away from that connection. That's the power that we have, is to push companies out of the industry. And it's slow, but it's steady. In France, there's a Dutch company, Airbus, British company, BAE Systems, French company, Groupe Real, Leonardo, which is an Italian company, and then naval groups Safran, Technicacom, and Thales are all involved in the French nuclear arsenal. And they make different components for the French arsenal. In Russia, there's Rostec, Spec Chemistry, United Aircraft Corporation, and there's also a Belarusian company, Volat, which is operated out of Minsk, and they make basically the devices that bring the big weapons, the big ICBMs, to the location for them to be launched. And in the UK, the tricky thing about the UK is most of the contracts that the UK nuclear arsenal, for the UK nuclear arsenal, go through the United States. And so it's a tangled web of contracts. But there are some UK companies, Babcock International and Rolls-Royce, that are heavily involved in the Dreadnought and Vanguard class submarines. And then there's BAE Systems as well, also involved in the submarines. General Dynamics, L3Harris, and Lockheed Martin, who make the Trident missiles, with which those submarines are armed. The US has the most companies involved. And this is why the US spends the most money on its nuclear arsenal. It's all contracted out to private industry. And I won't read the list of companies. There are many involved in the UK arsenal, but I will point out a few. Boeing, which has had a terrible track record on its production over the last couple of years, its airplanes falling out of the sky. Boeing makes intercontinental ballistic missiles for the United States. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman are also two large contractors. And RTX, which is formerly known as Raytheon Technologies, they are also heavily involved in the US arsenal. And they make a lot of other weapon systems. And over the last year, RTX has been challenged for a lot of its activities, including providing weapons to countries that are using them to support human rights abuses. These companies' involvement is related to the warheads or to specifically designed nuclear-capable delivery systems. With Don't Bank on the Bomb, we're very conservative when we name companies. So we're very careful to make sure those companies are involved in nuclear weapons-specific systems. Some of these companies do make dual-use technology that is both military and civilian, but Don't Bank on the Bomb does not include any technology that isn't for nuclear weapons. It focuses on nuclear weapon systems. And I want to talk about a couple of the programs. And Northrop Grumman is a huge contractor, and it is involved in both the US and the UK nuclear weapons programs. It has $31 billion in outstanding contracts for this work. And it makes the missiles that are designed to deliver catastrophic harm in 30 minutes or less anywhere in the world, because that is what intercontinental ballistic missiles are designed to do, to reach the entire planet in 30 minutes or less. Northrop Grumman does that. General Dynamics is another huge profiteer, and their outstanding contracts have a potential value of around $24 billion. But General Dynamics, in addition to producing the key components for these submarines and for some of the launch capabilities for some of the missiles, they also are involved in a number of what are called joint ventures or consortiums, where they're working as part of other companies together in a group and involved in other ways in the nuclear weapons arsenals of the United States and the United Kingdom. And then Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin takes credit for being the original contractor for intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they have gigantic contracts. But the thing about Lockheed Martin, they're massive. They are possibly the largest weapons manufacturer in the world. And nuclear weapons is only a very small, a very tiny part of their overall business. If they canceled all of their nuclear weapons contracts, it would have very little impact on their overall revenue, on what they deliver for their shareholders. I mentioned BAE Systems, Boeing, Leonardo, RTX. They also hold multi-billion-dollar contracts. And the other companies that build the key components or contribute to nuclear weapons testing, development, production, manufacture, possession, stockpiling, or use. With Don't Bank on the Bomb, the companies that are identified are all contributing to activities. They are assisting with activities that are prohibited under the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It is part of the methodology of that report. And it's a way that we can be consistent over time. And it's been now 13 years since that report was initially published. Now, these companies, they buy influence. And sometimes they keep getting new contracts. And so we have started to track the ways that they try to influence the debate on nuclear weapons. They do that through governments, directly, through think tanks, and also in their cooperation with financial institutions. We have identified that these companies donated more than $6 million to top think tanks that research and write about nuclear weapons. And these companies, they have current and former employees that sit on the board of directors or the advisory councils of these think tanks. So they're not saying, oh, you have to write that nuclear weapons are a good idea. But what we have seen time and time again is that the think tanks who do receive money from these nuclear weapon contractors are not as bold in their condemnation of nuclear weapons, or they avoid talking about the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of any nuclear weapon. Instead, they focus their efforts on geostrategic stability, which allows the story of nuclear weapons to continue. We also see that the companies that are involved in the production of nuclear weapons share board members with financial institutions that have significant investments in those companies. So there are board members from Lockheed Martin that are on the board of corporate banks that give them massive loans. And it's a little bit shady, if not outright corrupt. Not only that, but in the US alone, we found the names of 550 lobbyists that were hired by the nuclear weapons industry to influence US policies. There are 435 policymakers elected in the US Congress, but 550 lobbyists working for the nuclear weapons industry. And these companies that I've talked about, they spent around $120 million lobbying governments in the US and France in 2023. And I only have that information because only the US and France require that to be published. It's a lot of influence. It's a lot of efforts to secure the idea of nuclear weapons. But investing, I want to talk about who invests and what do those investments look like. We have on the 18th of February, so very soon, the latest Don't Bank on the Bomb report will be launched. And that report will include information about investing and financing relationships that include loans and other forms of credit, like other commercial banking, like underwriting of share and bond issuances, as well as asset management, so ownership of shares or bonds and other financial services. And financial institutions can make these types of investments on their own behalf or on behalf of third parties. Sometimes they hold accounts for others. And that's, like you and I. The money provided by these institutions does not go only to nuclear weapon related activities. Usually the money is designated clearly for general corporate support. But as long as the money is in the pocket, what it comes out to spend is basically unrestricted. And a lot of these investors do not put any restrictions whatsoever on their investments. It's impossible to make sure that funds invested will not facilitate nuclear weapon production. Even earmarked funds provided by lenders or bond underwriters free up other flows of capital that companies can then use at their discretion. So I always think of it as, just because you give me money and you tell me I can only carry it in my left pocket, it doesn't mean that I can't take the money I already had in my left pocket and move it into my shirt pocket. Once the money comes in, it's almost impossible to track exactly what each cent was used for. And like I said, on the 18th of February, the newest Don't Bank on the Bomb report will be launched. So I'm going to tell you a few things about what will be in that report, but not all the details because it will be coming out then. So as I said, there are 7 Japanese financial institutions that are identified. And these were identified as a snapshot was taken of their portfolios and what they held in August of 2024. They may have changed since that time. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. There may be some changes since then, but this was at that time of the snapshot for the research. And these 7 financial institutions are listed with links to the nuclear weapons industry. Mitsubishi Financial, SMBC Group, Mitsubishi UFJ Financial, the Government Pension Investment Fund, Nippon Life Insurance, Fuyo General Lease, and Oryx Corporation. I want to talk about one of them specifically. I want to talk about the Government Pension Investment Fund. And this is a big problem because it means the government is making a profit from the companies that are building nuclear weapons. And this profit is then used to support people across the Japanese society. It means everyone is affected by these profits. And yet, the stewardship policy of the investment fund requires that asset managers should take non-financial information into consideration when engaging with investee companies. And non-financial information should include the information contained within companies' corporate governance reports and integrated reporting, which is a fancy way, a very kind of somewhat complicated way to say that they have to look at not just not just the company's ratings on the stock market, but also what has that company reported about its governance and about its impact in environmental, social, and governance concerns in its integrated report. There's a lot of factors to consider. And for the Government Pension Investment Fund, issues of corruption, governance, and the risks associated with nuclear weapons production should be factored into decisions about whether or not to invest in the companies I've talked about. Because their investment principles say that the fund promotes environmental, social, and governance investment in order to reduce negative externalities arising from those issues. And ESG, it's called ESG considerations, have been shown time and time again to improve a long-term return on the overall portfolio. So when you look at a company's track record on environmental, social, and governance issues, and they do well, that company is more likely to give you a long-term benefit, better return on your investment. And since the government pension fund has a 100-year timeline, and looking at that return on investment, it should not invest in companies that are producing nuclear weapons. The pension fund should exclude companies that build products that put every living thing at risk. And that means stopping the financing of the nuclear weapons industry. And not only should they look at this because of the weapons themselves, but a number of these companies, RTX, Boeing, Northrop Grumman in particular, and Airbus, four of those in particular, are under investigation for bribery and corruption. Some of them are already paying fines because of their involvement in corruption scandals. That is not good governance. And the fund should make sure to remove any investment from these companies quickly in order to protect Japanese citizens for the long time and to protect those pensions that everyone in society relies on. But some of this may sound quite depressing, but I want to come back and say there is some good news. There's always some good news, and it's important to keep that in mind. We have found more than 130 financial institutions that have explicitly expressed support for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. A lot of these institutions are citing the ban treaty. They point to the ban treaty as the reason they exclude the companies involved in nuclear weapons from their portfolio. In 2016, when we did the Don't Bank on the Bomb assessment of nuclear weapon policies, that was before the ban treaty was negotiated, we found 54 policies that excluded nuclear weapon producers. After the treaty was adopted, way back in 2017, that number rose to 77. And in our last analysis, there was 109 exclusion policies in place around nuclear weapons production. And I think that's really impressive. And it's because of the steady and good work of people who are concerned about this issue. There are some policy leaders in this space, and they provide a snapshot of the emerging norm within the financial sector to avoid companies that contribute to existential risk. So in addition to the increase in identified policies, the application, the way that those policies are put into place is becoming much more comprehensive. And that is also showing a trend within the financial sector of its role and its responsibility to resist and say no to the production of inhumane weapons. And there are a lot of reasons. Nuclear weapons is one reason, but there are other reasons to avoid these companies. So one of them is the Sustainable Development Goals, because nuclear weapons pose a clear risk to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And a lot of the financial industry has recognized they have a responsibility to support the Sustainable Development Goals. You can't end hunger or achieve food security when you invest in a weapon that could put more than 2 billion people at risk of famine. You can't ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for people at all ages if you invest in a weapon that is designed to incinerate a city in a flash of light. The SDGs in nuclear weapons do not exist in harmony. And so financial institutions that want to support the SDGs should not support the companies that build nuclear weapons. There's been an emerging norm around human rights risks and the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. And these guiding principles are based on 3 pillars: the responsibility of the state to protect, corporate responsibility to respect the human rights of everyone involved in both up and downstream in the supply chain, and responsibility for remedy. So this is where victims have access to effective remedy. When I talk to people, to banks, to pension funds, insurance companies, they recognize the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. And when I talk about the ban treaty, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and its efforts to protect and ensure victim assistance and environmental remediation, I talk about it in the context of remedy. This is a responsibility to remediate harms conducted in the past. But these principles, these UN guiding principles, are a way by which some stakeholders assess the possibility of seeking remedy for harms caused by the development, production, and manufacture of nuclear weapons. And it's a way to prevent future harm by encouraging alternate business practices that do not put the environment or put human rights at risk. So companies, and a lot of financial companies, claim they follow the UN guiding principles. And we can come back to them and say, this is great. We want you to follow these guiding principles on human rights. And that means you have to avoid production or profiteering from nuclear weapons. And it's also because our work within the human rights space, nuclear weapons and human rights, has evolved so much over the years. And the Human Rights Committee General Comment number 36 recognizes the human rights risks associated with nuclear weapons. And we know that remediating environments affected by nuclear weapons use and testing is extremely difficult at best. And it could be impossible in some circumstances. So we have to prevent the harm. And it's always wonderful to work with physicians who understand the power of prevention. Finally, I do want to touch back again on the issue of corruption, because a lot of the companies involved in the production of nuclear weapons have a history of bad behavior. As I mentioned, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and RTX, they have had repeated concerns raised at shareholder meetings about their activities, particularly in the context of human rights violations, as well as the reputational and regulatory risks they face by continuing to finance the production of weapons prohibited under international law. Some of these companies have gone so far as to post inaccurate or disingenuous information on their websites, suggesting that since they're not making the nuclear warheads, the nuclear explosive device specifically, their role in producing missiles or submarines designed to deliver nuclear weapons doesn't really mean they're involved in nuclear weapon production. However, every international treaty that talks about nuclear weapons, whether it be the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, cite both nuclear explosive devices and nuclear weapons, recognizing that the missile designed to deliver that nuclear explosive device is an integral part of nuclear weapons and therefore also prohibited. It's important that we continue to assert that and remind them of this. And aside from involvement in nuclear weapons production, these companies also pose other risks. I mentioned that Boeing pled guilty to criminal fraud charges over its failure to make safety improvements after 2 fatal plane crashes last year. RTX is paying $950 million in settlements to US authorities over fraud and bribery charges. And the UK Serious Fraud Office and the French Parquet National Financier are investigating Thales over suspected bribery and corruption. Airbus, also involved in the French arsenal, has had to pay record fines for past bribery schemes they were involved with in selling helicopters to Kuwait. So these are other reasons to reconsider the risk involved with financial relations with these companies. Now, nuclear weapons are a problem, and there are a number of solutions. And I think we need to remember nuclear weapons are not normal. They are big, dumb, clumsy bombs designed to destroy entire cities in a flash. And I know people are joining here in Tokyo and joining online because 80 years ago, the nuclear age began. But it does not have to continue forever. And that is also why we are here. And while they continue to make massive profits from contracts to produce and maintain weapons of mass destruction, the number of companies that recognize nuclear weapons are problematic and that their increasing obligations under human rights reviews and investor scrutiny require them to step away from the industry, the number of companies that recognize this problem is growing. And we are working with investors because we have the law, the TPNW, on our side. And we can build national or city level legislation to support international law. And at the end of the day, when the cost of business as usual becomes too high, usual business changes. And we've seen this time and time again through history, from South African apartheid regime to child labor to tobacco, when shunning by the financial industry has had a profound social impact. And we know divestment from a single financial institution is probably not going to be the one thing that changes everybody's mind about nuclear weapons. But we don't know what will be the final thing that changes everyone's mind about nuclear weapons. And we are building up the evidence that nuclear weapons are not okay over and over. And divestment by even a few institutions or countries based on the same justification can have a huge impact on a company's strategic direction. We have seen this with 2 companies that have left the nuclear weapons industry. Our efforts together got ICAN to stop its nuclear weapons contracts, and it got Serco to say that they will never bid on another nuclear weapons contract because they will never be able to be considered a socially responsible investment if they did. That was our work together. So thank you very much. Now, there are many ways that we do work on these issues. And it's important that we respect and support all of the different ways that we can work to address the problem of nuclear weapons, because we want to put an end to nuclear weapons forever. And when we focus on the financial side, we have a chance to say that the business of nuclear weapons is not legitimate, just as nuclear weapons themselves are not legitimate. So I'll end with a thought. No investments, no financing, no production, no nuclear weapons. And yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We don't have much time. However, maybe we can go back to the floor, or those of you who are participating on Zoom, if you have any questions, we can probably take one. I guess there's one. So I guess there's one person on the floor wants to ask question. I came to Yamanashi. I am Takamatsu. I am not involved personally, actively. However, I guess there have been activities. There's a Hiroshima Bank is actually investing in the nuclear industries, or they are not going to. I guess there has been a talk. In region, if I was the one, maybe I'm from Yamanashi Prefecture, so I can talk to Yamanashi Chuo Bank or Kofu Bank. I can work towards them. And even if I don't have much money to invest in the bank, maybe it's still maybe effective. That's what I like to try. That's how I felt. I would like to be that way. Thank you very much for your question. The financial institutions you saw in the list amongst the Japanese financial institutions, the ones we checked. So I'm sure there are more banks we haven't checked, especially the Citibank. I'm sure there might have been other city banks that does state that they are not going, they ban to invest, to loan the nuclear manufacturers. However, maybe they are not in our research. Going to the bank directly and talk to them is also a way. However, it may be very difficult to go to the person at the window, and they may not listen to you directly like that. So, for example, if you have some relationship, or if anyone's know in upper level personal or board members also, like if you have any network, like if your counterpart or business partner is involved or something, it would be great. So I will appreciate your cooperation on this matter. Thank you very much for your question. We started from 4 years ago, and it's like the organization We weren't sure like how we could do it. We saw more. We went to the life insurance corporation because of the pension plan at about 1 trillion yen. It was like our hostage. So we thought through this because we went to the banks a lot, but of course we couldn't talk to them. We also went to Hiroshima, we marched, and about 10 media, including TV program came, but it is very difficult to be listened to. So we are trying to find a way to kind of penetrate into. So if they could listen to you, that may be great. I'd like you to take this with you. It has a QR code on this piece of card. It's DBOB. So please check the YouTube program so you can watch the animation film. It has been played for 150,000 times. If it's shown at the Everyone's Song program on the NHK, the national TV program in Japan, what would happen? It's a small step forward, but if it's difficult to go to the bank directly, by doing so, maybe you'll be taken by the media. So if there's anything you can do easily is to watch this animation. I like to change the world by doing this. It may be difficult to go to the bank and so on directly, but this is something you can do. Is the song also sang in other languages other than Japanese?
なかなか個人でね、銀行行っても
Yes, only in
できない
Japanese.
かもしれませんけど、銀行のホー
So
ムペー
just
ジに
going
見
to
る
the
と、
bank
金融と
personally,
商
they may
品
not
が
listen to you.
見れますの
However,
で、で、その
on the
中
bank
に
website, you can
何が
see
書い
their
てあるかという
philosophy
の
and
とです
so
ね、
on.
確認し
And
ていただ
also
くっていうの
their,
も一つの
so
方
you
法か
can
と思います。
check what actually
我
stated
々だ
on
って
their
全
website.
部の日本中の銀行をチェック
And
することはなかなかでき
because
ませんの
just
で、
a
ぜひよろしくお
member
願いし
of
たい
the
と思
BOB
いま
in
す。
Japan, like we can't check all the bank websites, but if you can do that, it'd be great.
はい。
Excuse me, there's one more questions online. What are those Japanese corporations? Can't see that.
さん
So, どうしたらいいのこれ。What are the corporations probably related to manufacturing nuclear weapons that are related to the financial institutions? For example, Mitsubishi UFJ, Boeing. So there are other corporations. You can see like 88.6 billion yen is going to one of the industries and so on. So they have the direct loan. So if he named a few. DPIF shows some of the materials to be bought by these industries. And maybe stocks from these corporations to be purchased. So there are more to name. Sorry, I couldn't catch all the names. It was kind of mumbling.
もし詳しく知りたい方がござい
If
まし
you
たら、
want to hear more details,
方に
you
ですね
can go to DBOB.
質問を直接投げ
You
かけ
can
ていただ
contact
ければ、もう少
DBOB
し詳しく
directly,
資料を
ask
提
us
供することができる
questions,
と
and
思
we
い
may
ま
be
すの
able
で、
to provide
よ
you
ろしくお
more
願いします。
information or the materials regarding this
もう
matter.
すでに時間もだいぶ過ぎてお
We
ります
have
ので、
gone over the
そろそろ
time
終わ
quite a
りにした
bit,
いと思い
so
ま
we'd
す。
like to
で
close
は
this
最後に
session.
ですね、中村先生にマイク
So
を
we'd like
お
to
渡しします。
get a few words from Mr.
どうぞお
Nakamura.
手いただいてありがとうございます。
So thank you very much for
一
coming
般の人が
today.
ね、銀行に行ったり、
And
金融
for
街に行っ
the
たら
general
ね、
public to go
傷つ
to
い
the
て帰れるん
bank,
でね。まあ
they
私ら
don't
いろん
usually
な
listen
形
to
で
you,
ね、
so they may
もう
feel
いじ
bad
めにされてやっと
afterwards
編み出したんがね、
and
まあなんか
depressed.
こういう方法
So
で
that's the
テレビ
reason
が
why
ある
I
けどね、
came up with this
まあだか
idea,
らアニメ
such
流
as a
します
song,
のでね、
animation
この
song.
アニメをね、子供さんでもいいし、
So you can
何
show
歳
it
の
to
子供でもいいし、小
children
学
or
生でもいい
somebody's
し、中学
children
生でもいい
or
し、見て
elementary
もら
school
ってね、
students,
なんや
junior
これ
high
ってい
school
うことでね、
students.
そ
So
れ
you
が
can
流
be
行るよう
parent
に、
and
まあ
children.
それ今一番考え
I
てる
like
策なんでしょ
I
う。
like
銀行
this to
映
be
画、専門
popular.
会社また今年もいっぱい行きますけどね。
So I would
そこで言
go
うたようにね、
visit many places.
風が吹いてきてるんですよね。
I
見て
feel
ね、
the wind coming
あの
towards
スポン
us
サーがおるようにな
to
るんですよ。
push
うわ、
us.
あそこの会社、核兵器のお金貸してるっていうのが悪いと、
So
核兵器禁止条約があるんでね、
because
そ
the
れをまあ回
TPNW
収、
has
一
been
般市民社
ratified
会が気づくっていうこ
and
とが大事なん
people
ですよ。
can
気
realize
づか
that
せ方
investing
も
in
良い方法
manufacturing
でね、このアニメもね、
nuclear
すご
weapons
い
are
父
bad
さんのように
things.
味がないと思うんですよ。何べんも聞いて
So
もうて、嫌われないようなこのアニメになってるんでね。まあ、
So
皆さん協
again,
力くだ
this
さい。
animation is something very
はい。それで
well
は
received and won't be hated. So
うん
please watch.
歌を流していただく前に、せ
So
っかくですから
before we play
ス
this
ージさん
again,
に、
let's
感
have a
想も
word
含めて一
from
言、
Susie one
お
more
言葉
time
をいた
with
だ
a
ければと思
feedback.
いますが、いかがでしょうか。
Is okay?
Thank you. And I think I just will end. I know we're very short on time. When I travel, I go into banks when I'm traveling and I ask them, do you know if this bank has any connection to nuclear weapons? And the teller, they never have an answer. They don't know. But we get to start a small conversation about nuclear weapons. And we can talk about it. And I give them my name card and I say, here's some more, let's talk about this. We can learn more, we can do something. We do this together. So any way that we can raise the issue gives us power and strength. And when we feel sad because they don't know anything or they don't want to talk to us, we can come back and listen to this song and remind ourselves of our hope. So thank you all very much.
スージさん、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much,
最後に歌の
Susie.
宣伝までしていただきました。
Thank you for
それでは
advertising the
歌の
song
方を
as
流
well.
していただきまして、
So we're going
この
to
セッションを
watch
終わりに
this
したいと思います。よろし
animation
くお願いし
song
ます。
and close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you very much. This is the end of this session. Thank you for your participation.